Hey everyone, it's Carissa Wiley at sprinkledwithglitter.com. Thanks for joining me today. Today I am sharing a couple of really beautiful Christmas projects, and I am celebrating the brand new release from Pigment Craft Company. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Pigment Craft Co., but they have some amazing stamps, inks, and dyes, and I absolutely love this release. I love anything holiday, but these are just extra gorgeous. Now, I will be using the Pigment Craft Co. dye inks today, and I wanted to give you a little look at some of the stamps that I'll be using and a couple of the other stamps that I'm not using. That first one was Winter Bloom. This one is Winter Sprig, and the bulk of my projects are going to come from that set today. This is the Partridge stamp set, and I think it is absolutely beautiful. It doesn't look like much here, but I'm hoping to share a card featuring this gorgeous stamp set soon. Now, I thought this was really cool. This is a Christmas bouquet stamp set, and it has the full bouquet kind of outlined and the coordinating die. But there are also some coordinating stencils where you can color it in using the stencils, or there are the more solid stamp images that you can fill in that outline as well, or you could use them on your own. I really love when companies come out with product suites like this where you can buy part of the product suite or you can buy all of it and use them interchangeably. And I did want to point out that in that die set, there are a couple of individual dies as well. Now I'm going to flip through some of the other stamps in this release. There are some fun sentiments and some just really beautiful products. You should go check it out. And I wanted to give you a quick look at the Pigment Craft Company color palette. Now I'm going to be using the greens and that SEAGRASS today. This is a very boho color palette, and the inks are absolutely beautiful. They are a foam base ink pad, not a felt base. So they're similar to like the Catherine Pooler ink pads. If you're familiar with those, they have that kind of squishy foam, or Concord and Ninth has that as well. I really love the way the foam ink pads transfer the ink to the stamps, so it works out really nicely. Now I've picked a bunch of stamps, of mostly greenery stamps. These are from the Winter Sprig and Winter Bloom stamp sets, and I have mounted them onto the lid of my Misty, and I'm using a half sheet of heavyweight Neenah Solar White cardstock. Now, when I brought in my half sheet of cardstock, I realized there was no place for me to place my magnet, so I brought in my sticky mat, and I'm placing the magnet on the left edge of my sticky mat, and that way I leave the entire area on my cardstock open for stamping. Now, these are fairly solid stamps, and it's the first time that I'm using them. So I am prepping them by kind of rubbing across the surface of them with a dry cloth. That's going to remove any residue that's left over from the manufacturing process. And then I can ink these up by gently tapping the ink pad over the images and close the lid of my Misty to stamp them onto this heavyweight white cardstock. Now, I'm going to be doing a bunch of mass producing, and I'm going to share with you a couple of tips for getting holiday craft sesh ready. I think that it's important to kind of approach the holiday season with a little intention, have some things done ahead of time so you're not trying to do it all at once. And now is a great time to start prepping for that, because all of the companies are coming out with these beautiful stamps, dies, stencils, and more for the holidays. Now I've gone ahead and lined up the coordinating dies for all of these beautiful stamps, and I'm holding them in place with a little bit of highlighter tape. I will have that linked in the description below, so if you're curious as to what I'm using, you can check it out there. And I'm gonna run these through my Gemini Junior. Now this is gonna serve a dual purpose. Number one, I'm gonna have all of these images die cut and ready to go. But also, I am going to have this jig in which I can place some blank white die cuts and stamp these images over and over again. So I recommend, if you have a stamp set that you really love and you know you're going to use it on a bunch of projects, go ahead and stamp and die cut several of the images in advance. And that way, when you are ready to craft, you're not spending your time doing that. You can do the more kind of creative process of creating. Now I'm taking this jig and I'm placing it back into my Misty stamping tool. And I know that all of those openings are going to be where my stamps were previously stamped. And now I can take some more Neenah Solar White heavyweight cardstock and I can die cut a ton of these images. And I'm gonna just go through and do a bunch of die cutting and stamping all at once. And I have to admit, at first I was taping these into place to die cut them, and it was just taking too much time. So I just arranged them on each half sheet of Neenah Solar White heavyweight cardstock and ran that through my die cut machine, and I had a set of plain white die cuts that I can stamp with these beautiful images. Now, I have my sticky mat underneath this jig, and so when I place these die cuts into this negative portion or this jig that I've created, that they are being held in place by that sticky mat. Then I can go ahead and ink up my stamps again and stamp them onto the die cuts. So I am doing kind of the reverse of what you would normally do. But when you're creating a lot of images, it's great to go ahead and create that jig, die cut several plain white cardstock images, place them into the jig, and then stamp. Now, these are great images for kind of mass producing and producing ahead of time, because when you think of a color palette for Christmas, your greens really are kind of a neutral in that color palette. So you can choose a bunch of greenery images, and then if you need a different focal image later on down the road, you can just stamp those kind of on a one-off basis. But you know that these greens, these various greens and sprigs and branches are going to be useful on a lot of different styles of Christmas and holiday cards. So I'm working my way through this, and I am using the beautiful greens from Pigment Craft Company. They have jade, let's see if I can remember them all. Eucalyptus, sage, and fir, and that is going from light to dark. And I love that this color palette is a little bit different than anything else I have in my collection. Now, once I have all the green portions stamped, there are a couple of these images that have kind of a stem that go in it or additional berries that need to be stamped. So I am taking these die cuts, placing them back into the jig, aligning the little berries and or stems with my die cut and stamped image, and then I can ink those up and stamp those in the same way. So a couple of tips here, like I mentioned before, for getting holiday craft sesh ready is to have a bunch of these stamped and die cut images ready ahead of time, and also to choose images that you know are going to work with a variety of style of cards. So like I mentioned before, the greenery works on so many different types of holiday cards, but this greenery is generic enough that you really could use it year round, and I think it's absolutely beautiful. Now I'm stamping my berries in a blush pink ink, and I used the Pigment Craft Company SEAGRASS ink to stamp the stems on all of this greenery. And I love the combination of this really pretty blush pink and these really kind of muted boho kind of colored greens that I have going on. So here's a look at all of the images that I have prepped today. These are from the Winter Sprig and the Winter Bloom stamp sets. I have these ready to go on cards or tags or treat boxes. You could use these on toppers, on little pillow boxes, or to decorate a gift card. These are going to be great to have on hand for the holiday season. But I thought I would take some of these images and go ahead and make a couple of projects for you today. So I have this cardstock here. This is actually a cardstock from the Paper Source. It is their Blush Luxe cardstock, and it is a little more orangey than pink, I would say. It's just a touch more on the orange side than the pale rose that I use a lot from Basil. So it does have a little bit different tone, and I thought it would kind of incorporate with the Pigment Craft Company inks a little bit better than the blush that I normally use, or the Basil Pale Rose. Now I've gone ahead and die cut this circle nesting tag die from Pigment Craft Company from this Blush Luxe cardstock. And now I'm taking the glow ink from Pigment Craft Company and the bitty diagonal stripe stencil and adding just a little detail just to the bottom portion of this tag. And my idea is to kind of make it look like an ornament in the end. Now I have the Snow is Falling stamp set, and I am going to use a couple of the sentiments from this for my card project. So I have the Mary and the 2U, and there are coordinating dies available for these sentiments. So I've gone ahead and die cut those from this plain white cardstock. And then I'm going to use the Wishes stamp, also from the Snow is Falling stamp set. And I thought it would be really beautiful to have it on this green base. So I've taken the Pigment Craft Company Fur ink pad and I've gone direct to paper with that ink, and I dried it before I heat embossed my sentiment on top of it. And I kind of skipped through that because y'all know how to do that, right? So now I have this trimmed down into a little banner, and I'm going to take some liquid glue. I'm using the Barely Arts glue, and I've just put it along the bottom of that Mary sentiment there. And then I'm going to put a little bit of liquid glue along the top of the 2U sentiment and attach it to that banner as well. And I'm kind of just holding it over this tag that I've created to kind of give me an idea of where I want my alignment. Now, in order to make this little adorable tag look more like an ornament, I decided to go ahead and add some gold heat embossing just to the top of the tag. So I've masked off a straight line using a little bit of Post-it tape. I've inked up that area with some Versamark ink and then sprinkled on some gilded embossing powder from Brutus Monroe. And now I'm using my heat tool to melt that embossing powder, and that gives me the little gold detail on the top of this tag and transforms it from a tag to an ornament. So now that I have all of my pieces ready to go, I can kind of start arranging and see what I kind of want to do. I'm varying the different green tones that I'm using throughout all of this greenery. So there's a lot of greenery, but there's an assortment of different greens that I'm using here. I'm not using all jade or all fur, so I'm kind of mixing that up. And then I'm going to go ahead and start adhering things when I kind of like where it's going. So a lot of times when I'm building a card or a project, I will start out by kind of laying it out on my surface. And when I'm certain about certain elements, I will go ahead and like lock that in by gluing it down. And so that's what I'm kind of doing here. And I'm using a variety of liquid glue and foam adhesive to adhere all of these various pieces to the ornament. And then when I go to add the pieces to the actual card front, I'm going to use some liquid glue for those. And by using a variety of different adhesives here, I get a lot of different levels and depths and different dimension here. So the ornament will actually sit up on some foam adhesive itself, and these pieces that I'm adhering directly to the card front will sit behind those. So I'm going to get a lot of different variants here in the dimension. Now, once I adhered all the pieces to the card front itself, I went ahead and ran this through my die cut machine using a Pink Fresh Studio diagonal stitch rectangle die to add a little bit of diagonal stitching around the border of this card front. And it was at this point that I thought, wow, this would make a really great horizontal card too. I didn't end up doing that, but it's definitely an option. I went ahead and put some foam adhesive on the back of my ornament here and placed it onto my card front. And I'm just making sure that that 2U doesn't hang off of the card front too much. I finished this card project off by attaching this to a blush card base. I added a little bow of twine at the top of this ornament, and then I'm adding a few sparkling clear sequins just so that there's a little bit of sparkle kind of peeking out from these various greenery elements. Now, I took a lot of the same elements and I made this into a tag as well. So it's a little more simplified than the card version because there's not as many layers, but you can see how I just was able to grab a few of those stamped and die cut pieces and make a quick tag as well. And I still have plenty of all of these stamped and die cut pieces that I can make card projects with throughout the holiday season. And if I need something in a hurry or in a pinch, it will come together in a snap. As always, I will have links to the featured products used in these projects in the description at YouTube. So if you're looking for something in particular, be sure you check there. Or you can head on over to my blog at sprinkledwithglitter.com. I will have that linked below as well. Over there, you'll find more still shots, more information, a complete list of supplies, as well as some information on an Instagram hop where we are giving away a lot of prizes from Pigment Craft Company. So you can head on over to my Instagram to check that out and enter for your chance to win. Now, before you go, I just want to say thank you for being here, for watching today. I hope you enjoyed these projects and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications here on my YouTube channel so you don't miss any of my paper crafting and card making video tutorials. And let me know in the comments below what your favorite mass producing tip for the holidays is. Also, if you liked this video, I would love it if you would share it with a friend that you think might enjoy it as well. Thanks for watching, you guys. I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for putting up with my sound issues. I'm having a few problems with my microphone right now, so I really appreciate you bearing with me. And until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day. Hey, thanks for watching to the very end. You know, if you've made it this far, you are one of my favorites. To subscribe to my channel, go ahead and click the button on the left side of the screen. And here's a couple more video tutorials I thought you might enjoy.